All right, guys, we are back with another episode of Just Context, episode 10. Um, guys, I know we had some things that we touched on last week that I'm going to finish on, especially pertaining to the Jamaican election. Just because I feel like, as a Jamaican, I want to touch on certain things based on where the country has been, where it's trying to go to, what it should be sustaining, and I would say in the mental space of it, what the long term goal should be based on what I've come to understand. And I want to take understanding in a different way. I am a documentary fanatic when it comes to, especially when it comes to my personal culture. One of the reason why I have the political thing in mind, and I'm bringing it to the forefront, as you guys probably heard or know. We discussed Jamaica had its election process that happened on September the 3rd. Um, and I wanted to make sure I give some times because there was, I think, one personal seat that had to do a recount with, which is Lisa Anna. And I want to make sure I gave that part due process because of how close the vote was, which she basically ended up winning anyway. But in the sense of it, Jamaica has again elected the Jamaican Labour Party as the majority party who will be running the country for another 4 years. I had to take a look down the schematics to see how the political process has gone, and I've realized that Jamaica has had a very long stint when one political party has had a country for 2 years in 2 years in two terms to kind of dictate what the ability of the country was. Um, I have my personal endeavor, and I want to use the word personal endeavor, and that's just so I'm not taking too far out of context because I grew up personally as a JLP in my personal feelings, and I would like to say this just so I can address it in my time. When I was growing up, Edward Siaga was the head of the party, and a lot of people can say that they've given Edward Siaga the fact that he helps lead the Showa posse in different ways because during that time Jamaica's violent stint was very 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 strong in the Jamaican Labour Party. But I feel like, and I'm gonna say this, I can be taken out of context, that during that process, we've learned a lot of things. It's good to take away from what you've had and move forward with what you've gained. So you leave what you lost in the background. So in my journey, I went back to take a look to the first election to see who won it. Jamaica's first election was in 1944, which was won by the Jamaica Labour Party. I want to make sure I get that. And they did go ahead and was running the country for 2 terms. And during that process, Jamaica thrived. It thrived. It thrived. I would like to say the People's National Party was the first party. Um, Norman Manley was their leader during that stint. A very strong, studious man. I would say this: if I was born or grew up during that period, I would consider myself PNP, probably because of the statue of what he was trying to hold Jamaica for. Um, he was very middle class, yes, but he was very firm that education was the number one thing or number one priority for young Jamaican citizens, which during that period it showed. So I would like to give some accountability there. Granted, Alexander Bustamante was the leader of the Jamaican Labour Party at the moment, but him and Manley were cousins. So you kind of realize that in the sense it was like the family was trying to run the country, and they had a very distinctive way of doing it. Now, I do want to say I'm starting here because this is where the party kind of differed, because you kind of said that I looked at it that the People's National Party was for the middle class, and the Jamaican Labour Party was for the poor class people, right? During that stint, I would say this: Jamaica was eliminating their poor class. I would like to say the poverty line during those early stints. But as political divided has taken any country into any different stint, so shall it goes. Jamaica did had a couple stints where the People's National Party was in control and the country was thriving. I do know that if you know anything about our country, we're gangster in our own way. We seem gangster. I do know that Fidel Castro and Norman Manley was friends.
I didn't understand that.
I realized that. This is why you don't have a smartwatch. My smartwatches respond to our podcast, guys. Just so you know how smart the watch is. Um, but you kind of realize where the country was gonna be going if we didn't have, I'm gonna say, world peace, or we weren't there's no unity. I would say this during that moment when Jamaica did stand with Cuba under the People's National Party. I would say we did stand with Cuba as a country in a whole. A lot of people did make it seem like, yes, we were, I guess, stepping in America's face at the moment, because America did ask us to denounce the Cubans, and we did not, and we lost funding. And I would like to say during those periods when the People's National Party was in control, Jamaica felt it. Jamaica did go back to JLP, and in that period, I would like to say this: Jamaica became violent during that time because we were so politically divided, and I think it reminds me of where the world is right now, especially in the United States. And I really don't want it to get there where, in the civility of it, um, people from both political sides were fighting, and it was no longer words. It was more physical, guns, people's house being burnt down, people being attacked in the street, just basically over political views. And to see where we are now in the United States, where it's like it's either you're far left or you're far right. When, not saying I don't have any problem with anybody being strictly Republican or anyone being strictly Democratical, the idea that we need to be able to move forward together is what's basically needed. Now, I would like to say this, and I'm bringing this part up with Jamaica being in a destructive state of the Jamaican Labor Party, because at that moment, Jamaica was crying for the poverty to change. Like, people were becoming more poor, right? Because of how our financial gain was happening, the funding that we were gaining from other countries, especially from the United States, um, stopped. And in the fact that it stopped, Jamaica got hurt because we went from the number one thriving country in the number one thriving third world country in the Caribbean to being falling to the bottom of the list. And I think I've said this before when I talk about how strong Singapore has grown over that period of time and where Jamaican trajectory would have been. Now, I would like to say this: the People's National Party did go back and take another strong back hold over Jamaica. And this is the reason why it brought me to this conversation, to show that if you let corruption and deterioration sit for a quite some time, it will destroy a country. Now, during this period, Jamaica had two different leaders of the People's National Party for their prime minister. The first one, if I remember him correctly, don't judge me, guys. I know Portia Simpson was the last one. I can't remember his name right now. Give me a second, and I'll make sure I grab his name. And it's sad because I grew up around his family members. That's the reason why I should know his name, because his cousins lived in my neighborhood. So when the country was going to shambles, people target their house. So I, it's so sad. But I'll give you that conversation in a minute. But I would like to say, not so I can dwell on the names of the leaders during that period. I would like to say Jamaicans suffered because instead of the money that was being spent on Jamaican personally, was more spent in political endeavors. And I think that's what kind of helped the Jamaican Labor Party work for what it's working for right now. Because sometimes you need stuff to fail, and sometimes you need stuff to fail horribly. And I want to use the word horribly in a very strong degree. It has to fail horribly for somebody to stop and step outside the box and look and be like, "Yo, this is what we're doing wrong." And I'm gonna say this, guys, and Jamaicans don't hate me for this one. I am happy that the PNP, People's National Party, ran Jamaica the way they did, because it gave, sometimes you have things have to get broken. And I'm bringing this talking about what I see that's going on in the United States right now. And the reason why I say that, because we've watched how police brutality has changed how people view authority. We've watched how we have politicians, and I mean, we have Donald Trump, who's not even qualified to be a politician that's running the country. It's not the first time America has done that. We've had a peanut farmer before, um, but we also have long-term politicians who've been there for so long who has not made any form of strong change. So you start to realize that you have to step outside the box and watch a process deteriorate. Now, at this current moment, and I want to thank a couple people. I mean, I want to thank Usain Bolt and Shelly and Fraser Price and Jamaica's athletics department for what they've done for Jamaica, who has helped, because I've you come to realize like a lot of people from young rural areas that was not thriving, who's what really put them back into the country. Now, in that stint, you have that poor people was looking at it like, okay, we need to get the People's National Party out of Jamaica. Not that we want to take them out of the country, but we need to take them out of office. During that stint of taking them out of office, Jamaica came across two significant talents that helped brighten our future. And this is away from music, because Jamaica has always had music, but it has a different disdain. During this process, we had Shelley and Fraser Price and Usain Bolt, who became track and field athletes who started showing young Jamaicans that we can believe back into our culture. Because if you grew up in the sports or in the inner city of Jamaica, the whole idea is if you can play any form of sport, you need to get up out of there. Like, I'm gonna take the scholarship and go to the United States or Europe or any country, right? And take my talents over there, which actually takes your currency or your spending towards that country as well. So you find that Jamaican athletes were making all this money, but none of this money was being spent inside of Jamaica. Now, during this period, you find that a lot of the athletes leaving the JLP, even in that stint, was encouraging Jamaican athletes to say, look, instead of leaving and going overseas, we would like you to, as much as bad as it sounds, stay in Jamaica, invest into Jamaica, right? A lot of them did not do that, but we had a very few who stayed, and it proved worthy of that time. The first person who stayed, and I would like to give credit to the People's National Party, because they tried this first with Asafa Powell, and Asafa had mixed emotions and if he really wanted to stay in Jamaica. When the Jamaican Labour Party came in, they basically looked at Asafa and was like, "Look, um, we want you to bring your endorsement. We want you to make this investment back in Jamaica. We'll go back to the MVP track club and stay there," because he had already got a Nike contract. So it was like, no, Nike endorsements is coming into Jamaica. Now, during this period, as I said, Jamaica had two breakout stars. We have Usain Bolt, Shelly and Fraser Price. Usain got endorsed by Puma, which brought back Puma funding into Jamaica, and also Shelly Ann got endorsed by Nike, which brought more Nike funding into Jamaica. Normally, as I said, most athletes, who was getting funded by Jamaican by a major corporation this way, never really lives in Jamaica. You can, if you look back at the history of it, majority of them live out, as bad as it sounds, they live in Florida, because I've seen a lot of you guys, especially in Sawgrass Mall. So shout out to all my Jamaican people who I've seen Sawgrass Mall. But you see a lot of them out there, and because I grew up around a track and field environment, I follow a lot of these people, social media wise, career wise, to see where they live. Like, even if you look at the great Merlin Ottey, Merlin never really lived in Jamaica. She retired and lives in Sylvania, where she now runs for the country. So not saying I'm talking against her, but she's a very decorated Jamaican athlete. But now, as I want to get back to Jamaican Labour Party, was basically looking at people like, yo, we need to invest into our country. Let's go back and put back into Jamaica. And I'm using this for the same thing in America, because I see America spend a lot of their finances and a lot of their stuff that's built outside of the country, which we could be doing in our same stance. And that goes back to agriculture. And I wish Jamaica will take the same idea. I know we love the Chinese, but we need to stop buying Chinese product and get back into investing in the Jamaican agriculture. But in the sense of it, these movements have put this funding back into Jamaica and given Jamaica this trajectory. Now, I would like to say this. During this process, we had Jamaican Labour Party, because they're gangster, and I want to say because they're gangster, had their stand with or the Showa posse, because that's who the JLP people are. Dudas was one of the main front runners during that moment, and he was sent to say that he helped unify the inner city. Well, get the poor people to vote JLP back in. That's when JLP first got back into power for after nearly 12 years. I want to make sure of that. Yeah, 4 3 12. Or it's more 16 years. Sorry, man. 16 years I've never been back in power. During that process, they lost the next election because Jamaica went into a state of emergency, not because the country was failing, but because we failed as a country to extradite a criminal in the sense of matter of who the United States wanted. They wanted Christopher Coke, which is Dudas, and it put Jamaica in a state of emergency because we had a small civil war against the police officers. And they said that because of how strong his political ties were towards the Jamaican Labour Party, that they did not see them fit to run the country. And I would say this at that moment, guys, I did agree. And I want to use the word agree because if I do strongly believe if there's something that's deteriorating the country or causing your country any harm, you need to find a way to get it out. It's just like going to the doctor. If I go to the doctor and the doctor, I'm like, I'm having a flu. And he's like, yo, drink Tamiflu, which I'm not promoting Tamiflu, right? And he said, taking this is gonna help you be better. That's what you're supposed to do. Take the foolishness. That's gonna fix your body. So at that moment, Jamaica Labour Party leadership was not good enough. We had to get rid of them. At that moment, we had Portia Simpson. Portia Simpson, I would like to, I would stay right there, Portia. Portia is a long term political party, but just as what the PNP have done in the previous years, instead of investing back into our country, she took her money to the United States, which there's nothing wrong with it. I love the fact that she lives in Miami. I mean, it's a wonderful place to live in. But in the sense that if you're a political figure, you need to reinvest back into the country. And this is something I'm brought back to with Andrew Holiness because Andrew Holiness, who is the current Prime Minister of Jamaica, who is now officially doing a second term, which hasn't been done by the JLP since the 1980s. So I want to give him some congratulations on that. AKA Bro God. Yeah, but even in the long term of it, Andrew Holiness is back in Jamaica. I want to say the fact that the JLP is now investing into Jamaica overall in a whole, which I do feel like if you're going to be running a country, this is what you need to do. The fact that every money that being spent, or technically should be spent, is now accounted for. You now feel like we have somebody for the people that is by the people. I would say this: Obama had the same feeling when he was in office because even though people didn't like him in certain sense, they felt comforted and respected. And I feel like that's what the Jamaican Labour Party has been giving Jamaica. Jamaicans hope. I watch my country at this current moment being considered the number one thriving country in the Caribbean in the last 7 years. I want to make sure. No, actually, in the last 6 years. And I want, not saying I'm trying to give them all the credit, but for the fact that you have a political party and for where they've gone, Jamaica has gone green. It's never happened this way. It's been unanimously divided that, not even that, unanimously said that our country is being run better under this administration. Like even I was like the predecessor of the People's National Party, even couldn't even hold him seat. Do you know what it seems like when you can't even hold your whole house? If you can't run the whole house, how you gonna run the whole country? Right. So I know I went on a little rant for this, guys, just because I'm happy to where my country is going. I'm very proud, regardless of which political party is in there. But I'm very proud to see where we're going, what the stance is, and what the move is, and to realize that even so, that people who is here over the world, and I'm not saying it's because it's just JLP, but a lot of labor rights that I know is saying that they're excited to move back home and they're excited to reinvest back into our country. And I am happy for that stint. And I would like to say this: they've even put in some reform to help police deal with people. Like as a government, not just the fact that we're doing this because it's politically divided. It's like, no, we got to fix these things. And I think that that's one of the reasons why it's gonna have us jump to our next conversation to where the craziness of the world is.
Yeah. So, um, yeah. So, I mean, I agree with what you're saying about the JLP. I'm not partisan when it comes to Jamaican politics. Like, I'm for PMP or JLP. I'm just I want to see progress. Um,
Yes.
but I do feel like the JLP has shown us progress in a lot of different areas, not just one. Um,
Yeah.
um, I do think that there is room for improvement. I do think that the same way that PMP had, scandals, the JLP has had their scandals. The same way, like, as you said, PMP had money went missing. I feel like it's kind of been the same for JLP, just not to a
Too
huge
much.
extent. Uh,
Yeah.
so they can both improve. They can both do better. I do think that this election will see the PMP going in a different direction, which is great. I think the older heads are now starting to have to listen to the younger heads in the party, which is also great. Um, Improvement, progress, that's all we really want to see. So I'm happy for it. And yeah, as you said, it's not unanimous, like you said, but for the most part, the country is green right now. A lot of seats in the country were taken over by JLP. So, we'll see what happens coming up to, I guess, the next election.
Yeah. 4 more years.
Yeah. And yeah, to progress.
The progress, I guess. Well, I would say this in every direction that the country should be going should definitely be progress.
Hmm.
If you ain't, if progress ain't the goal, it's like what is? I mean, I understand the purpose of ICE and I understand the purpose of police, but I guess I'll let you jump into the next conversation because it's something that you're a little bit more passionate about. I have personal emotions mixed into this, and not saying I want to get too personal because I get taken out of context.
All right. So today, um, circulating on the timeline was an article about a detention center in Georgia that is forcing hysterectomies on female detainees. I guess a whistleblower came forward, an LPN that works with the doctor who performed the hysterectomies, and um, basically ended up telling us what's been going on. He's performing hysterectomies on detainees for no apparent reason. No, the patients themselves don't really know why he's doing it. They're not getting proper explanations. They don't really understand what's happening. There was one patient that he took out one of her ovaries and then realized that he took out the wrong one, and he had to go back in and take out the right one, which therefore means she has no ovaries, and therefore means that she is sterile. Um, she can no longer have kids. So apparently, this has been going on in this detention center. Um, there have been a few allegations um, throughout this administration, throughout this presidency, where ICE is just taking liberty with detainees across the country. There's been allegations of rape, and there's been allegations of abuse. Um, Apparently, ICE is just running crazy. Um, it didn't help that this happened, shortly after I watched the first episode of Netflix's Immigration Nation. I was so pissed off when I saw that. Um, you know, ICE is under the DHS umbrella, the Department of Homeland Security, which is, essentially a new I don't want to say organization, but it's a new agency, I guess. They formed it after 9/11. And then they made all these other agencies underneath DHS, like ICE and USCIS, and CBP. Customs and Border Patrol. I mean, anything that has to do with securing the borders is under DHS. And ICE is one of those agencies that seems to have very little oversight. And it's really been affecting immigration in general, but detainees. The rights of people that are being detained are just not even something that they're bothering with at this point. I mean, the first episode, by time, maybe the first 10 minutes, I was furious because you have ICE agents pretending to be police officers. And I mean, ICE agents, they're technically police, they're technically law enforcement, right? But like, they're not police officers. And so they're telling people that they're police officers because they're allowed to, because, again, there's not real oversight over ICE. So people are answering the doors for quote unquote police officers without warrants because they are administrative, and, there are no real warrants. So they have to try to get into your house basically any way they can. So they are tricking people, telling them that, they have warrants and they're police and they need to open the door. And, the first episode was like, the man straight up was like, I'm not going to talk to you through the door. You need to open the door. And obviously, having somebody that has authority who is quote unquote a police officer is going to scare you into opening the door, especially people that don't really know their rights. So you have, ICE agents just running amok at this point and feeling like, well, it's just the job. Like, I'm just doing my job. And if I don't do it, someone else is going to do it. I mean, okay, I do my job too. And if I don't do it, someone else is going to do it too. But at the end of the day, I can still say that I'm doing my job ethically. I can still say that I'm doing my job to the letter of the law. If another corrupt attorney wants to do something that I wouldn't, then so be it. I mean, go your way, hire another attorney and do what you do. But at the end of the day, I have my morals intact. And I know that I'm not doing anything that is actually harming people. I mean, I think it's one thing to say that, you're doing your job, but it's another thing to say that you're actually screwing people over on purpose. Because guess what? If they didn't answer the door, you go about your business and see if you can find them another day. I mean, I'm just watching everything that's been happening throughout this entire administration, and I'm tired. I'm sick. I'm sick. Like I really have no words at this point. And people are comparing it to concentration camps and
Janelle, not to cut you, like the whole time you were talking, when you started talking about the cutting off of uteruses and stuff like that, that was on my mind. Not, I didn't want to interrupt you, but when you said it, I'm like, yo, because I was like, how can I say that without not being taken out of context? Because it feels and seems that way for the fact that body parts are being missing. And I'm not saying it's a concentration camp, but if you go back to what concentration camps were doing, you're right up the alley. Like you'll, and I don't want to say the word low key, but if you're taking out people's uteruses for stuff of medical concern, that is alarming. But continue, because that broke my heart when you said it. That's the reason why I said this is more emotional for me.
yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. Like, I don't understand how any of this is actually being allowed to happen. I don't even understand how the United States, as one of the front runners for protecting human rights internationally, is being allowed to do this. Like, why hasn't the rest of the world gotten together and said, like, stop it? Because at this point it's just ridiculous. It's insane that this is these are the kinds of things that we're allowing to happen in this country. And we're allowing this administration to get away with, because ICE was not like this under the previous administration. They may have had their, crappy things that they would have done, but they were not to this extent. And like I said, if you watch Immigration Nation, I couldn't get through it, but there's, a bunch of ICE officers that will literally explain to you, like, yeah, it got different. It was different after, this president came into power and we had a new mission. and we had to relearn things and do things, you know, differently, and basically ramp up everything that we were doing. They were now looking for even what they call quote unquote incidentals, meaning like they're going to detain somebody who shouldn't be in the country, usually a criminal, meaning like committed an actual state crime, whether drugs or robbery or whatever the case is, right? Because people like to also say that, you know, you're a criminal if you stayed in the country past the time that they gave you, right? But if we're gonna, you know, if we're gonna be real about it, like they're not criminals in the way that people imagine. Like these people are overstaying the time that they've been given for their vacation, cool. Maybe they've stayed for a few years, cool. But they're not harming people. They're not attacking people. You know, it's not a criminal in the traditional sense, right? So I don't like to conflate the two, and I don't like to call them criminals, regardless of whether it is a misdemeanor to overstay.
Janelle, do you know, not to cut you, because the criminal aspect hurts in different ways, because the Native Americans would have viewed the same thing differently just in the simple fact. Now, there is a path to naturalization, right? But in the path of naturalization, at times, especially if you're married, right, you may go through that overstay process. But why is it so difficult for somebody who's trying to feed their family to be a criminal? I want to use the word feeding their family, not to take away from the fact that there are real criminals out there, because when they talk about the drug dealers or people who's trying to sell the drugs, that is an issue. So I do feel that that's a criminal act. So if you're coming here and that's what you're doing, you put yourself in that position. If you're coming here and you're stealing, right? I mean that you're breaking into people's residence, house, businesses, and removing items from their property that belongs to them, you need to go to jail. If you're coming here and you're a murderer, right? Yes, you're doing something ill intent. But if you're coming here and you're trying to work an honest job, and I'm talking about, and I just want to use the word of Mexicans, but I've seen a lot of the Mexicans who's in the field working on the crops, knowing that some of the people, especially I want to use black people too, that ain't trying to be out in the field picking no corn and messing with no crops. And you got a lot of people here who's trying to work hard for their family, work hard. And not saying there's not a process for naturalization, but the process that we go through in that moment, right? It takes time. It may make you overstay, and no one, because they're overstay or going through a process, need to feel like a criminal. Because if somebody tells me that, you know what, CN, you're putting some weight on, if you continue on this process, you're going to become diabetic. Now that doesn't mean I have diabetes. It just means that the process that I'm on, right, may deteriorate to something. So if somebody may be illegal for a time, and I'm not saying like this, like somebody who's hardworking, the process to find out before you start harassing some of these people is to find out, are you trying to be naturalized? And I know I'm talking out of pocket, continue.
So let me just help you rephrase there. I don't call people illegals. I don't think that is appropriate. People are not illegals. The term that anyone is looking for is undocumented. But, you know, I will say that there is a difference between being undocumented and overstaying without a process pending, and actually overstaying because of a process pending. So when you overstay because a process is pending, it's not counted as an overstay. I just want to make that clear. You know, once you have a case that's pending before USCIS, you're not counted as quote unquote undocumented, illegal, any of that. You have a case pending, and until you get the answer, then you'll know, you know, what your situation is, whether you need to go back home or whatever the case is, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like people look at this and see a black and white situation, and it's not, first of all. But second of all, even if someone overstays and even if someone is undocumented, I feel like the way that the country and this administration has been treating people is that they're automatically the enemy. Like, they're still human beings and they still deserve to be treated like human beings, and I feel like that's what people are missing, regardless of whether they overstayed. I mean, I've seen people go, well, who told them to come over here? They shouldn't have overstayed to begin with. And it's like, okay, maybe that's correct. Like, maybe they shouldn't have overstayed and maybe they shouldn't have come knowing that they would be undocumented, right? But regardless of whether they came undocumented and they shouldn't have come undocumented, doesn't mean that they're no longer a person and deserve to have absolutely no rights. Deserve to be kept in cages, deserve to be, essentially experiments for a doctor to like take uteri out. Like, I'm not really understanding how people are are having both thoughts. Like, it doesn't go together for me. You know, I just think that people are getting to a point of just not caring about human life, and it's really disappointing to me because, like I said, you see people saying that they shouldn't have come to begin with, and like, oh well, and then you have articles coming out about how they're raping people and stealing children and taking out uteri, and I'm in amazement at this point, and I really just don't know even what to say anymore. Like, this is ridiculous, and I don't understand why the people in this country are not actually banding together instead of saying, oh well. Anyway.
Janelle, I'm listening to you talk and it hurts my feelings because when it comes to immigration in other countries, America actually does pretty good in those areas. It's like, it seems like when they have to fight a cause that doesn't belong here, the fight is different. I mean, the belief is different. When you listen to how they will say, oh well, this country's treating this person so unfairly, it's like, yeah, but there's nothing wrong with pointing the finger, guys. There's nothing wrong with pointing the finger. But sometimes, as Michael Jackson said, you got to start with a man in the mirror. So if you're going to be starting pointing the finger at anybody else, you got to point at yourself. And I'm not going to say that the process of undocumentation is so constrained. It's just that it's difficult for a lot of people to be able to get there. And I understand, like, especially when they talk about undocumented Mexicans, they come across the border. But I would like to say this, and I can be taken out of context, and you can judge me in this. What is the cost of trying to find a better life? What is the cost of that? If you have to try to find a better life, and I'm not saying it, again, I'm not talking about the rapists, the murderers, and some are good people that are coming across the borders. But if you're trying to make a better life for yourself, how do you do that? If I'm gonna say this, the things that the gang activity that goes on in Mexico in this moment, like a gang's gonna show up to your house and decide they're gonna kill your whole family. At that moment, you got to get up and run. You're gonna go to the next endeavor. If I do remember, when the Europeans are coming over, is because they're being thrown out of Europe.
Yeah. I mean,
I'll let you continue. I'm sorry, but man, that hurt.
no, I'm like I said, we're on the same page. I'm like I said, I'm tired. I'm tired of this administration. I'm tired of all the crap that they keep getting away with and no one is saying anything about. I'm tired of the dehumanization of society at this point, of people just in general, not just immigrants, but just generally speaking. People are just being dehumanized, and I just don't think it's okay. It's gotten to a level that's ridiculous at this point.
It's not to stop it. It's been more than ridiculous, because I'm gonna say something even more ludicrous for you guys. A lot of people saying that President Trump should get a Nobel Peace Prize for the peace and the unity that he's doing in the Middle East. I want to make sure I say that, because he's helping all these other countries create unity in Israel. And It's the same conversation. This is the reason why I brought this up, Janelle, because I brought it up from the conversation I had earlier about the People's National Party. You know what I mean? In the sense that how do you expect to take care of somebody else's house when you can't take care of your own? How are you going to tell me you can find unity in a whole other country out there, right? And other countries out there when you're within this country that we live in right now, there is no unity. And not to say it's disrespectful. It doesn't give respect because nobody wants to follow something that's not guaranteed. It don't ever last long. This is why we see the political divide the way it is. It's because we not fixing what's the main issue. Like we have all this going on here right now, and we're talking about just the immigration status of it. Not comes with rioting and all the other madness that's going on. We're just in the box of immigration. Now, I want to say this. A lot of people said Obama was putting kids in cages too when it comes to the the lockup for undocumented kids, right? But even in the process, for the fact that a political office is taking young innocent kids, right, and putting them in cages. Like for one, the only thing that we really put in cages is animals. And I want you to realize when we send people to jail, we don't say we're putting them in cages. We put them behind bars, just so we can differentiate the word cages. You know what I mean? Just so we can marinate on that part. So for the fact that you're gonna lock me and make me feel like I'm in a cage, and then you're gonna sleep on the floor like an animal. And so, what do you think you're telling young kids in that moment? What do you think you're telling that generation of young people? And I don't want to use word Mexicans because Mexicans is not the only country that's feeling the issue with ICE right now. How do you tell them when they grow up and someone and I don't and I hate using ludicrous thought because if I feel like if I say what I want to say right now, it's going to push me to my next conversation, which I want to stay here for a second. But this create monsters.
I was literally just thinking that the next generation of um, Central Americans, South Americans who are getting caught in this immigration issue, um, being detained at the border, being herded like animals at the border, being shot for coming over. Um, I just think it's going to change the narrative of how Central Americans and South Americans see uh, the United States, see Americans. um, you're, worried about all of these quote unquote murderers and rapists, and at the end of the day, the way that you're treating these children, they're gonna grow up to realize that you're the enemy.
Yeah, and not saying anything, you're forcing a lot of these kids into those situations. For one, you just talked about the raping. That's what's going on inside of the ICE detention center. Now, it's bad enough as a child, you're afraid of the circumstances that you're in, but you got to also be worried about being raped. And guys, you and I both know rape don't discriminate to male or female. And I'm saying this being a male. There's no discrimination because females are being raped and males are being raped too. Those are the things that you're worried about. And as a child, I would say this: we talk about pedophilia and how strong the pedophilia in this world is, right? I mean, I'll save that conversation for another podcast. But in the sense of of how much mental damage you're doing to an individual, and I'm saying there are levels to it. There's levels to damage, but think about what level of damage are you inflicting on a child. What we see what happens with foster kids. And I don't want to use foster homes because I know some wonderful people that's come from foster homes. But we see the issue that goes on just with foster kids. Now, if you take that and impl- amplify what ICE is doing, that's that on so many stronger levels. Because I'm not saying this, I had friends in high school that was living in those type of homes, and I'm not saying I'm going to call her name because I think she may be a friends of joint me and you in some sense. but to listen to the environment and the thought that goes through these people's body, right? Now to think about what a child is feeling in that matter. Like if my son even run and scratch up me, it worries me. When kids is dealing with more than scratches inside those detention centers, more than scratches, more than just a, and I don't want not to be cursing, no, more than just an ass whooping, guys. That's what the fear is. The fear that you're in a position that you may never see your mom and dad again, and you don't know what direction your life is going. So when I use the word concentration camps, that's kind of where I feel, because when people was going into Nazis concentration camps back in the day, they did not know what their outcome would be. Do you know how the one of the most deteriorating thing as a human being is uncertainty. Not knowing what tomorrow holds, not knowing what your future lies. Like the average person, if they can't find out, if they're not working, and drives them nuts, I got to go get this job because I gotta eat. You know what I mean? I just want to live a regular life. Now you're telling somebody that their thought process is now beyond that on amplified levels. And we've talked about it from a child perspective. What is it from an adult perspective that you start sitting there and start giving up on the world and giving up on life? Because when you start taking away people's belief, that's what happened. These are the one or two things. Is either they're going to lash out or they're going to give up. And the two are they're both the lessers. They're not even not one is greater, because lashing out caused with riots and all the craziness. And when you give up, that causes suicide. So in the retrospect, I will say this now: the food for thought, Janelle, is like we're having population control, but that would be wrong for me to even use that in some form of narrative. But it's the thought of it hurts. Yeah. So, Jet, I guess that brings us to our next narrative.
um yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the police shootings that have been happening um, across the country. And no, this time it is not a police shooting a civilian, it is civilians shooting police. We've seen a couple cases so far over the past couple months, I would say. But the most recent one that I saw, um, I was just in amazement, honestly, when I watched the video. It was a man in Oklahoma that got stopped for a traffic stop. And ultimately, he ended up shooting both officers that were at the traffic stop, including a supervisor, a sheriff. Um, and one of them died. I believe it was the sheriff that died. And the officer lived and is wounded. Um, he ended up getting arrested. No, he was not shot and killed. He ended up getting arrested. Um, but the stop itself, there was a video that was about 15 minutes long. It was just amazing. I really sat there and it was almost like a movie. It was something that, had it been a Black person, the video would not have lasted 15 minutes, I can tell you that. And it definitely would not have ended with him getting out of the car, shooting 2 police officers, and then running off with a friend of his, who he had called to come and pick him up during his arrest. Every single thing about this video was just amazing to me. They had so much patience with him. I have never seen police officers with any Black person give so much respect and attention and humanization. Like, it just was amazing to me. So basically what happened is he pulled out in front of a police officer. He made an illegal turn because he should have yielded to the police officer. And when he made the illegal turn, he turned into the far right lane instead of the left lane where he should have turned into. The police officer pulls him over and tells him that he needs to see his license, registration, all of that. The tag on the car was expired. It was apparently a new car of a couple of months, and the registration was overdue by 60 days, if I'm not mistaken. And
2 months.
right, and he asks him, okay, well, let me see your license and insurance. He pulls out some kind of insurance papers, and the insurance is expired. He pulls out the title of the car. And then he looked everywhere for his driver's license and couldn't find it. Okay, so first of all, I can tell you this. As a Black person, if I don't have insurance, I don't have registration that's valid, and I can't find my driver's license, dear God, I'm scared already. This man, went to his car. He asked him, first of all, he asked the guy if he had anything in his car that he needed to know about, drugs, guns, heroin, meth. He starts naming off all kinds of drugs, and he says no. So the officer goes back to his car and I guess starts running his, information. Realizes that he has a prior of narcotics possession or paraphernalia. The sheriff shows up now, I guess as backup, and they go back to his car and they tell him that he needs to get out of the car. And homeboy flat out was like, nope, not doing it, not getting out the car. I know my rights. I don't have to. Why are you doing this? It was a full-on conversation back and forth. And he was like, I want to see your supervisor. Supervisor came up and said, sir, I am the supervisor. I'm the sheriff. Look at my badge. Do you see this? I mean, there was so much explanations in this situation. It was like, whoa, like Black people can't even get you to tell them why you're arresting them. Black people can't even get you to tell them why you pulled them over. This man got, you need to get out of the car. We're going to have to tow your car. You don't have a license. You don't have insurance. You don't have a registration on your car. If you don't get out of the car, we're going to tase you. They literally gave him at least 40 warnings. I'm not exaggerating. 40 warnings. They coaxed him out of the car. They explained him, out of the car. They did everything that they could have. And the man said, nope, not getting out of the car. He said, I know my rights. The sheriff was like, are you a lawyer? I don't know where you went to law school, but you need to get out of the car. I mean, at some point I started laughing because I cannot believe that this is still going on. I mean, you're really having this conversation, holding a taser up saying, hey, I'm going to have to tase you, sir. Do you want me to tase you? I'm going to have to do this if you don't get out of the car. Sir, please get out of the car. Sir, I'm going to tase you. Sir,
Joe, hold on.
With you.
Hold on. The nerve of the respect that he's giving him.
He even counted to, sir, I'm counting to three. 1, 2, 3. Sir, can you please get out of the car? Sir, do you want me to tase you? I mean, he got a whole countdown and there was still no movement. He still didn't get tased. He just refused to get out of the car. There was reaching into the car. The guy that got pulled over started reaching for whatever he started reaching for. He pulls out his phone. He makes a phone call. The sheriff yells at him to get off of the phone, and he does not get off of the phone. He's talking to his homeboy, Matt. Full conversation. Bro, can you come over here? I need you to witness this because I know my rights. This is where I'm at. Tells him the address and the intersection. Full conversation. He still doesn't get tased. I am in amazement. After he gets off of the phone, in the conversation, he's telling him, I need you to record this. And the officers flat out tell him, you can record it. Pull out your phone. Pull out your camera. Record us. You're already being recorded by our cameras, but you can pull out your camera and record it. I just need you to get out of the car. I mean, there was no part of this stop that I saw a Black person getting out of any police officer, like ever. I mean, we don't get explanations, we don't get patience, we don't get understanding, we don't get especially with a prior with a prior of drugs, and he's still got all of this explaining and, sir, I am the supervisor and look at my badge, do you want to see it? Of course you can record us. I mean, tell a Black person to pull out their phone. That is insane. That's insanity. You pull out a phone and you're getting shot. You pull out a phone and have a whole ass conversation in the middle of an arrest or in the middle of a stop, you are getting shot. Like, I mean, I think it's obvious at this point that we just do not have the same liberties with police officers. They don't look at us as human beings. They don't look at us as civilized beings the same way that they were looking at this man with a drug prior who was, oh, not only that, he was cursing at them too. This is BS. And why are you doing this and effing this and effing that? I mean, I've seen Black people get arrested simply for cursing, simply because they did not like the way that the police officer did not like the way that the Black person was speaking to them and cursing. And anyone in that situation is going to be upset. So I don't really understand the purpose of arresting somebody because they got upset and started cursing. But this man was cursing. This man was pulling out phone. This man was having phone calls. This man was telling a friend to come and get him. This man was flat out disobeying, saying that he didn't have to, and he still was not shot. He did, however, get tased, finally, after a good 10 minutes. When he got tased, he still didn't get out of the car. Eventually, his homeboy pulls up, and when he realizes that his homeboy is there to give him a ride out of the situation, he pulls a gun from underneath his seat in the scuffle and shoots both officers, and then runs off and gets into his friend's car, and they drive away.
So the sad thing about it, he made his friend an accessory. Can you imagine you're supposed to pick your homie up? Like, you pull up to the situation and become an accessory, like, sir, you just got felony charges. Wait, what did I do? You showed up. Dog. But he said that all he needed was a ride. You're not access. Now, Janelle, I would say this. I said it when you were talking because it is the audacity of the respect that was given. And I want to use the word audacity. And I'm gonna take it back to something you said. You said that during this administration, ICE got retrained. I want to make sure that you that statement was a strong verbally made, right? So you're trying to tell me you can retrain ICE agent but can't retrain the police. Now, that's one thing. Now, I would like to say this in the situation, the young man, the individual, the police took care of him the way every human being and wants to be treated. And I'm using the word human being because, guys, I'm gonna take one person out of the human being category right now because Black people don't get treated that way. So it's either you're trying to tell me that we're not a human being, or you're trying to tell me something else. I would love for you guys. Matter of fact, please drop a comment and tell me the answer to that question, just so I can put my mental space back in context. Because, for one, I would like to say this: it is sad to see people get treated the way you want to get treated by the police, and still end up being disrespected. Right? That is the first. That's the first and foremost thing that is wrong in that video. That hurts my feelings because as a Black man who's been harassed by the police in so many different times in my life, I wish that once I would have had that type of police officer to deal with. That is the audacity and the respect. And I'm talking about, you did not yield at the stop sign and I'm on the floor. Well, you're walking to the bus stop and you fit the description and I'm on the floor. My dog looked at him. I want you to understand. If the police would have looked at me and be like, yo, CN, I'm going to keep it real. If you don't correspond with me, you're going to get tased. At least mentally, I probably would have been able to brace for some tasing. Well, if you don't cooperate with me, sir, this is what's going to happen to you now. We're having this long conversation. Look, 1, 2, 3. Let me help you, woosah. Let's woosah you in the situation. Like, come on, let's rub your temple. Let's rub your temple. Let's put you into a relaxed state of mind before you kill me. Did
I can't. I mean, the like you said, the audacity, because I really sat there laughing, like they're really doing all of this for him. They even, I mean, the sheriff, when he showed up as backup, even went as far as to find out his name, to call him by his name. He flat out, in the middle of yelling at him to get out of the car and telling him he would tase him, looked at the other officer and said, "What's his name again?" And the officer told him his name. His name was David. And he turned to David and said, "David, listen, do you want me to tase you?" He called him by his name. It's amazing to me. Like, just like I said, the patience that they had with this man was just wild. And the fact that, had it been any person with even my color skin, your color skin, it doesn't matter. Like, they literally either would have been shot, abused, or already out of the car and in handcuffs.
Well, Janelle, for one, the handcuffs would have been the first. Because you do know, and so this is the reason why I talk about being ill trained, and this is the wrong thing. Majority of the time, when black people get stopped and talked by the police, they want to put you in handcuffs first before they talk to you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I want to make sure I said that. And especially if you have any previous charges, not saying the guy that had any previous charge, but if you had any form of previous charge, no matter what it is, if you get this jaywalking, you're gonna get put in handcuffs because your record came up. I had to detain you to make sure that my situation is safe.
First of all, you don't even need to have a prior. They don't even need to know your name. You don't even have to have anything to do with why the police stopped the car. You are getting handcuffed. Like, it doesn't even have to be your issue. You're getting handcuffed. Look at what happened in Atlanta recently. I think it was Clayton County. And they pulled an Uber over. And the passenger that was in the passenger side seat was asked for his driver's license. For what reason, I don't know, because he had absolutely nothing to do with the situation. There's no reason to ask him for his driver's license. They spoke to the Uber driver. That was the extent of the situation. They didn't have anything on the passenger. And yet, when the passenger said, "Why do you want my driver's license? Why do I need to give you my driver's license?" he ended up on the floor, bloody, with handcuffs on him. There was no reason for that whatsoever. And I believe they ended up firing the deputy that was dealing with him. Either firing or they put him on probation, or I don't remember. Something happened.
Jenna, say it properly. They're gonna put him on paid administrative leave while we try to investigate the situation. The rhetoric has been very standard now.
Something along those lines is what's going to happen. But my point is that there's no explanations, there's no coaxing, there's no patience, there's no respect, there's nothing. There's not even following the law. It's just, you're black, I want to see what I can get on you. I want to see what I have on you. Like, what's good? Like, what, you're not listening to me? Boom, on the floor. Boom, I'm a like punch the crap out of you. Boom, you're in handcuffs. Like, that's the end of it. So this police stop was just, I literally was in awe watching this video. 15 minutes of trying to coax him out, even explaining to him the reason that he needed to get out of the car was because the vehicle could no longer be on the road and driven because there was no registration and no insurance. I just, like I said, just even explaining the fact that he needed to get out of the car so they could tow the car is just, wow, just mind blown. Like, you really gave that man an explanation before he even did what you wanted him to do. I'm just wow.
I would say the wow factor on the video itself, and I would say, guys, just for you guys to understand that what we're talking about, I strongly suggest please watch the video, just so you can put it in context for yourself, because I had to watch it a couple times just to make sure I was seeing and understanding from different perspective, because I'm gonna use the word flabbergasted, sorry about how patient the officer was when we've watched so many unarmed black men. I'm not gonna say that they were all unarmed, but we've watched so many unarmed black men um, being treated in so unprofessional way. I'm gonna say this: I guarantee the police officer who dealt with George Floyd would have dealt with this man this way, George would still be alive, regardless of whatever charges he's had in his past. Because I know that's always been the narrative, right?
Again, if we're gonna use George Floyd as an example, George Floyd was not resisting in any way on any of the cameras whatsoever. He really was asking, "Where do you want me? What do you want me to do now? Okay, you want me to walk over here?" So there was really no reason to get physical with him as they did. But and you know, him struggling because he couldn't breathe is not a reason to get physical either. It's not a reason to like hold him down to the point where he can't breathe even worse. So I just, you know, this is the reason that, you know, moving into another police shooting that I saw recently, where they really just rolled up on a police car that was parked and shot the two occupants, the two police officers in the car, and both were shot in. One survived, I think.
Yes.
And one died. However, this is the reason that things like this are going to keep happening. If you keep dehumanizing people and if you keep treating people the way that you're treating them, at some point in time, people are going to start fighting back. And don't get me wrong, rest in peace to those police officers that did die.
Yes.
Rest in peace to those police officers that were shot, especially the ones who were sitting there minding their own business.
Yes.
But I mean, I'm not saying that it's right, but what I'm saying is until something changes, this is what we're going to see. And I've said it before, you know, back when we had the civil rights and segregation movements where people were fighting for black rights, for human rights, because it's not even black rights, it's human rights. You saw a lot of this. People were you know, running around shooting cops basically for abuse. For abuse. So, you know, a lot of those people are still in jail or have, you know, died in jail, well, prison, sorry, or have died in prison because, you know, police officers apparently, you know, hold no responsibility in this context. For what reason, I don't know. But again, if you keep acting the way that you're acting towards people, and if you keep treating people as if they're less than human, there is a point in time when they will start to fight back. And I feel like here we are.
Here we are. So, Janelle, I mean, before we wrap it up, guys, just so we can, I want to put something in context. I have to do that just so I can mentally sigh for you people, in the sense that when Dave Chappelle came out and did his little stand up and talked about it's not gonna be justified until we get to rat-a-tat-tat-tat. You know, a lot of people was like, why is he inciting violence? Why is he telling people to do that? Now, I sat here mentally and I said this to my wife and a couple of my peers. Black people need to be quiet. And they're like, no, what you mean we need to be quiet? Because for one, we're talking and we're protesting and we're begging. That's what protesting to me feels like. Protesting is naturally should be like, oh, we're trying to stop injustice. But to me, that's like the last big plea or cry or beg to stop doing what you're doing because you're hurting. Right? Now, if you've done that and that is not working, obviously talking doesn't work. Now, I posted some on Facebook and anyway, and I think I've said this before, but you can judge me. How many more black people need to die, or how many more people need to die before we ask this question? Before what is going to get done? Nobody hasn't had the answer. So you know what it falls if you're going through process of elimination. The only process that is left, and it's sad for me to say it, is where the narrative is now. I know nobody wants to see it. I don't want to see it. Because for one, I don't want to stop by the police and the police feel like they need to shoot me because I'm a black man. Right? And I don't want no police officer to be driving or even be at any stop sign or a traffic light, you're feeling that, I may have to be looking at every car because somebody may be running up on me or trying to kill me. But if this is where we're at and this is not showing that we need to have the conversation, where do we go? Because it's not getting better. You guys are complaining about the riots, the protesting, when buildings are being damaged. Buildings. I'm gonna use the word again, buildings. So infrastructures that can get rebuilt that has no human life. It has human value, no human life, right? Now we're starting to lose things that cannot be replaced. When the building burned down, you can show up at Home Depot and Lowe's or get you a contractor. And matter of fact, use the insurance money that you probably gain out of the situation and build you a brand new better store. And if you are smart during that moment, you took out some terrorist or vandalism insurance. I don't know. Don't judge me. I don't know anything about insurance, but
GoFundMe.
go fund me, right? To say, and say that I'm saying that. Oh, okay. Just for the nasty narrative that for the strong left or right narrative, Black Lives Matters is destroy my building. So all my MAGA superiors donate to my cause, save my facility, because it's obvious people are driving from across state lines, killing people to help protect facilities, since facilities is so important, right? But we're at the point now where the protesting is stopping. The simple thing of peaceful protesting, where it's going to become ammunition. Like, I'm not going to say this, guys. On my Instagram, I got more people going to the gun range than anything else. It's like a thing now. Everybody want to prove how accurate they are because they feel like in the next coming months I may have to prove my accuracy. All right, like what you mean? Like you trying to tell me like us going to the range and shooting a little target practice? That's supposed to be as far as it gets with fun. But nah, bro, I have to be ready. And for one, and this is something that I dealt with, and this is to say the least. We talk about the people who were shooting people for destroying their buildings or their facilities, right? When I was at the range, the guy basically literally looked at me, and I'm happy my wife didn't tell me at the moment because there would have been a wrong place for everybody with guns to decide they're gonna have a disagreement. But he basically looked at me and was trying to tell me, if you're a protester, this is what you're gonna get. And he had a high power rifle, and he let off 30 of it just so he can prove his narrative, right? And then me and my boys over here, like we gotta let 30 off because we gotta let him know if you let 30, we can let 30. But what are we proving in that moment? Is that in case the war start, the ammunition's on both sides of the fence already. But that is where we're getting to, and that is the nasty as part about what I'm talking about. And this stems from me going back for the political process in Jamaica, not to use it, but Jamaica went to the process where this is what we were doing. We were killing each other over politics and for the wrong narrative. But this is where it seems that we're heading. Like, how do we stop that? I know, and I do want to say this, guys. It's sad. Leadership is what's necessary. And I would say this: if Donald Trump, as a leader, and I don't care who, if it was Obama, I would be giving him the same conversation, because a lot of people y'all keep feeling like because we're black, we don't take people on accountability. If there's one thing I can say about myself, I'm very big on accountability. That's why I'm a Pebbles person, because when it builds up, I'm gonna unload. Like, look here's all your foolishness. Let's go, right? But there's going to be some accountability for what is going on. If you're leading and your leadership is inciting these things, what are you telling me that your aim is for the country? Especially when you say you want to be for another 4 years. It's like, if in your 4 years we're practically close to a civil war, what do you think the next 4 years is going to look like? It's going to be more than rat tat 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 tat. It's going to look like the purge. Matter of fact, I got masks, but I don't plan on wearing no mask so I can be purging nobody. But that's what we sound like we're getting to. Like, I don't, like, mentally, I've been trying to recover from where we're heading. And every time and let's say this is where black people has been. Oh, every time something bad happens, give us about a week, we got over it. We're at a part where black people can't get over it and white people can't get over it. That is a dangerous area to be in. That's dangerous. Because if I can't get over it, there's only one thing left from it, is licking in your face. And that's a Jamaican talk. And there's only one thing for you to do, is lick me in my face. So since we're gonna lick each other in each other's faces, let's get the rumble. But guys, we do not need to get to that narrative. And that's where we're aiming. Now, I know we have other things that we could be talking about, but we racked up so much time. But
So I do just want to leave a parting thought that because of something that you said a while ago about society coming to civil war essentially. If you have not checked out Netflix, The Social Dilemma, I do think that everyone, and I mean everyone, no matter where you stand, no matter your beliefs in social media, no matter your political beliefs, no matter where you stand, everyone should watch that. What do we, I guess we call it a documentary.
Yes.
The Social Dilemma. Again, watch that because I think it does a really great job at illuminating how not I mean yeah how we've gotten to the point that we've gotten to basically, and the things that are lying beneath the surface that we may not pay attention to all the details.
Oh, you brought a documentary up, and I want to say this for all my geek people out there, and I'm gonna throw a little geek reference in there for you guys. If you have a documentary about technology and you have somebody like Steve Wozniak sitting in the audience because he feels he has to listen. And for anybody who don't know who Steve Wozniak is, he's the creator of Apple. That's Steve Jobs' best friend who made Apple when Steve Jobs sold it. So let's put that in perspective.
Yeah, this documentary was basically made by and for the people in the tech industry that were big in creating Facebook, LinkedIn, like all of the social medias. These are the people that were involved in it, and these were the people that know exactly what the programs were built on. So go listen to them, watch the show, The Social Dilemma, once again on Netflix. And yeah, I mean, I think we've talked enough, too much.
Too much. So guys, just so we know, last week episode we did talk about virtual schooling, among other things. So if you go ahead and you did go ahead and miss that episode, revert. You may find revert. Let me stop. Slide to the left. And you may be able to gain some knowledge. Actually, I had my daughter listen to it, and she's like, "Daddy, you hit it right on top of the head." So you'd be surprised when you share this one with your kids. They may be agreeing with you in so many different ways. Again, guys, that is the end of another full episode of Just Context. Now, if you guys have any information based on what we said or would like to shed any light, I like the light shedding, guys. Please shed it on me. If we were taken out of context in any way, please help put us back. Peace. Up until next week, guys. Boom.